even if you're able to get the creators like really into Web3, it's very difficult to get all of their community into Web3. Like you're talking about, like, tens of thousands of people, and that's kind of an impossible task, to be honest with you.
Hi everyone, welcome to yet another episode of NewForum. NewForum is powered by NewCoin Foundation, focused on fostering the expansion of decentralized social applications, also known as Social 3.0, by forming an ecosystem and a community of visionaries, creators, and investors. It provides a safe space for thinkers to communicate, inform, and share ideas in order to ensure the conscious and ethical growth of the new web, embedding the values of care, freedom, and creativity.
And as usual, we always bring you very exciting guests. And today we are talking with Sid Kalla, the co-founder and CTO at Roll. Roll is a social token infrastructure layer for the web. The protocol utilizes existing blockchain to issue branded social tokens for anyone to own, control, and coordinate the value they create across their network. We're going to discuss with Sid his work at Roll, the importance of ownership in Web3, social tokens, and what he thinks lies ahead in the space. Hey Sid, we're super excited to have you on today's episode.
Thanks, very excited to talk to you.
So to start things off, Sid, how are you doing today? And could you also tell us a bit about what you're doing at Roll?
Yeah, so I'm one of the co-founders and CTO at Roll. So essentially at Roll, we look at ourselves as building the infrastructure layer for social tokens. And a little bit into like social tokens, and what our idea in general with that is, if you were to like wind the clock back, let's say like we go back to the start of the online social world. So this is your early 2000s when your networks like Facebook and Twitter are still coming up. Pretty much like everything from then on until where we are seeing right now, we kind of like can very broadly classify that as the user-generated content era of social, right? This is the place where like Facebook is not hiring journalists, right? Like your Twitter is not hiring like writers to write for them. This is people like you and me contributing content to these platforms. And then, we kind of like build that social network around that. And in this world, there's literally trillions of dollars of value that's created. And most of that gets captured at the platform level, which is why something like Facebook is super valuable. Twitter is a valuable company to be in. And the creators and their communities then kind of become more at the mercy of the platforms themselves. In more of like a Web3 first world, then this is kind of enabled by your crypto and blockchain, kind of uniquely enabled because this is ownership kind of lying in the hands of the end users. We're able to shift that economic dynamic where the community that's generating the value is also able to hold and retain that value, irrespective of the platform you use. So in some ways, like we see this shift from user-generated content into this world of user-generated capital that we see powered by social tokens. And our role specifically, like we want to build that infrastructure level. So how do we make it as easy as possible for any social platform to integrate social tokens, whether it be Web 2 or Web 3?
Yeah, I guess I really like that social tokens are really important, and I think that being able to have like some sort of like the tools, right? The tools to make it easier to be able to sort of expand. I think it's really, really important. And I actually never thought about this idea that like a Web2 platform would be using social tokens, but I guess, maybe why not? And talking about social, I'm wondering, what is social money, and like how does it enable anyone to own and control, as well as coordinate the value that they create across their networks? I think you kind of touched on this concept a bit, but I'm curious to know exactly what social money means.
Yeah, so when we dive into the specifics of what that looks like, there's like a few design decisions that we make, and we believe that's kind of the right way forward for communities. So firstly, any social token that's issued on Roll always has a maximum supply. So right now that's 10 million tokens. So if you were to issue, let's say we were to issue like forums as like a social token that something like a NewForum can then use to build a community around what you guys are doing. Like, this is not your first rodeo into this world. You have already like built a large community of people around that. And let's say like you were trying to like expand that and you wanted to issue your social token on Roll. So forums in this example would have a total supply of 10 million. So let's say I were to earn 10,000 of these forum tokens, then I'm going to hold in perpetuity 0.1% of the total supply. Right. And so in some ways, what that means is as the community expands, as the community grows, as the value of this network becomes more valuable, I still get to hold 0.1% of the network. So it gets more valuable over time. This is a primitive that does not exist in the traditional Web2 world. There is no equivalent to saying, hey, I create a meme account on Twitter and I can like get the value that it generates for Twitter. Like that does not exist. Whereas like in this new world, the value really is coming from the community, right? So it's coming from the types of people you have included in this forum. What are they going to do with inside, like with each other? Like what kinds of opportunities can arise from people being in this space and like building together? So I think that's the most exciting part of social tokens. And then we have other primitives. So for example, we have vesting. So usually we have 2 million of these 10 million tokens upfront. So that's on the day that you issue. And the rest of them we vest for about a year. And creators can change that. So you can make it 3 years or 10 years. And then, we have some other primitives coming down the pipeline. We haven't released these yet, but things around like liquidity and staking that we are very excited about. So essentially like all of these Web3 tools that will let communities succeed is kind of like what we're building. And I think like this whole ecosystem of things around social tokens kind of like really make that into money for a community. And that's kind of that transition to social money in our minds. And yeah, like, we can talk about like how the Web2 side fits in there as well. But yeah, like very broadly, I think that's where we see social money as.
You spoke on this idea of community in Web3, right? And that sort of makes this concept of social token more, I guess, the potential and all the amazing things that creators can achieve through that. But then there are creators on these Web2 platforms and there are trends, right? And there's some sort of a common interest somehow, even though it's a bit chaotic and messy. So why can't it be, let's say, used in that sense?
Yeah, Salimi, that's a great question. And since we started Roll, like we kind of do believe that, right? Because just the ground realities of where we are today, Web3 is still a small space. And Web3 native tools are still very much in their infancy. So we are just seeing like some, let's say like publishing platforms or some of the things coming up. But like the honest truth is like Web2, people have been building Web2 for like the last 2 decades. Obviously, that's much more mature. So if you have a YouTube channel where you have, like 5 million followers, the Web3 equivalent of that really does not exist today. I know there are like some companies trying to do that, but not at the scale that YouTube is, right? So what we want to do is we want to make sure that if you are a YouTube creator, that you can use social tokens that are issued via Roll on YouTube. And so we have like several approaches towards doing that. And this is also like a broader perspective, right? Because like, at least for the foreseeable future, we think like Web2 and Web3 will evolve in parallel. So if you have a Clubhouse, then, Clubhouse is not a Web3 platform, but it was like a very successful audio platform on Web2. But we think like something like, whatever the next audio platform that comes in, like will be in a place that it's natively integrating, crypto and social tokens, because that gives a very powerful edge to like the next audio platform to differentiate itself from what came before that. So for us, that really becomes the infrastructure API layer. And we talk to like founders all the time, and a big thing for them integrating crypto is it's very hard. That's not their business, right? Like they are in the business of building like an audio platform or like a new video platform or social platforms, right? They're product people building that. whereas crypto is kind of this complete aside where, that's not their core competency. So what we want to do is we want to provide them with a suite of APIs that they can integrate on their side as easily as, how you see, connect your Twitter account, connect your Facebook account on some online platforms, you'll have connect your Roll account. And once you've connected that, you can pretty much like use your social tokens on Roll on any platform that you've connected to. So imagine like being able to tip your favorite artist one of the social tokens.
So I'm wondering, so do you see more value in, let's say, DAOs and brands and bigger creators using these social tokens, or how can we, also smaller creators, how can they get involved if they just have a few tokens of their own token? Like, how do you think this could play out?
Yeah, Joyce, that's interesting, right? Like we have worked with people of all like community sizes. So people with, like literally less than 100 followers, kind of like all the way to our most recent issuer, who is the professor. He's a YouTube creator in the basketball realm who has about close to like 10 million followers. So kind of like seen that whole spectrum. We have generally in practice found you do need a little bit of a community before you start your social token for it to really be successful. We have seen some attempts for people trying to bootstrap community through social tokens, and that can completely work too, but it'll just be a little bit more work for you to put in. But yeah, like that being said, like for example, we have seen people who are crypto native. They have a much easier time trying to kind of like build a community around that. So if you look at, one of the most valuable social tokens is Whale, and Whale is a large crypto art collector. And this person has a very large, one of one crypto artists and other people like way before like the NFT scene blew up. And these types of people just have it much easier to kind of like just understand what it takes for a social token to succeed.
Interesting. Yeah, actually, I never thought about the idea that you should have some sort of a bit of a community before you kind of dived into the concept of social tokens, but it kind of makes sense. And so I've been curious, to know how it's been for you, like, because you're an entrepreneur building in Web3, and I bet that must have been an interesting journey. And I'd like to hear if you experience any challenges, and I guess the joys and the challenges would be great to hear.
Yeah, just like, any entrepreneurial journey, it is like lots of ups and downs. I do think like Web3 kind of like just accentuates that a little bit more. So when you have your highs kind of, and then your price action is very much kind of like tied a bit to like the general ecosystem, like how easy it is to fundraise and all that. So like we started, when we got together, we started kind of like late 2017. So we've kind of like seen like several cycles of the crypto ups and downs as well. So generally like we do see a lot of noise in the bull markets. So, like someone else wants to build like this new social token, something, and then it's the hottest thing in the world for 3 months. And then like no one has heard about it since. So those can be a little challenging, but our thing is more like we want to build for the long term. Like we want to be here 10 years from now, still building, like still providing the tools for our creators, and kind of like doing it the right way, right? So for example, like one thing we don't want to do is if Roll were to go away as a company, we don't want these social token economies to collapse. So like while we provide the tools, it's very important that these economies can exist independent of Roll. So when we have like Whale that we're talking about, like we want to make sure that Whale can live completely independent of Roll, right? And same with everything that we issue. So part of the reason for, in fact, like building on the blockchain in the first place is exactly this. Like you don't have to trust us, and then we can plug into things like decentralized finance, like ecosystems on Ethereum, right? And then what that really lets us do is, this is right for some creators and not for others. But if you do go this route, essentially gives a dollar value to your social token. And that's very exciting for some, and that's terrifying for some, and that's fine. But if you do go that route, the interesting thing then is we don't have to build that exchange. Like we don't have to build that whole liquidity set because someone has already built that, and it's Uniswap. So what we will do is we'll integrate with Uniswap, right? So just this idea of that, the common like Lego kind of analogy. is very true even for social tokens. So if you were to, some social tokens can be used as payment on OpenSea. So we can't build an NFT marketplace. That's too much of an ask, but we can build like good social token infrastructure and then integrate that with the rest of Web3. So I think like that's why keeping up with the space is a little bit challenging as well, because there's always something new that, oh yeah, we should probably integrate with them as well, which I think does not happen in the traditional Web2 world as much.
I really like the idea of interoperability and that you can interchange different blockchains and different tools. And like you said, so that it can live on and that everyone can kind of use it. And I'm wondering, like, what kind of challenges do you see creators and people who want to get into social tokens and crypto? What do they face? Like, what is their current hesitation on jumping on this train?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Joyce, because we have seen that transition. So I would say, we have about like 400 or so creators who have issued their social token on Roll to date. And we started like 2018, right? I think, or like 2019 when we like really started in earnest to onboard some of these creators. And back then, this is like Ethereum below $100 type of a network, right? So crypto was like very scary for a lot of people. They in fact want to know like, hey, how can I like not talk about crypto with my followers and kind of just like still be able to use some of these things, to be able to use the tools, still get the benefits of everything kind of coming crypto, but maybe we try to like avoid really leaning into like the Web3 side of things, because when crypto is like too new, it can be like a little scary as well. Whereas now I think that's much less. Like people do want to like very happily like tell their followers like, hey, this is a Ethereum based or like a blockchain based token that we're building, and we can provide these things to you. And that's like a very I think like a market sentiment shift as well, like along with everything else. So yeah, like there have been like shifts like that, but generally speaking, like even if you're able to get the creators like really into Web3, it's very difficult to get all of their community into Web3. Like you're talking about like, tens of thousands of people, and that's kind of an impossible task, to be honest with you. So like our philosophy kind of has been to build around that, in the sense that we have two aspects we support. So we have a custodial wallet, so very similar to how Coinbase does it. So if, for example, if I were to send you, an Ether on Coinbase through your email address, that's an off-chain transaction because both of us have accounts at Coinbase. It does not need to be broadcast to the Ethereum network. But if I want to withdraw, I can just withdraw my Ethereum to my MetaMask address as well. So in a very similar fashion, like if you have like a few social tokens that you're holding and you just don't care much about crypto or like the Web3 or libertarian philosophies and all of that stuff, like you can just sign up to our app. And signing up is very simple as like, your email and password, just like you would sign up to Facebook or Twitter. And then you can just earn some of the social tokens and you can just hold it in your Roll wallet. And then that can be used on any platforms we've integrated with as well. So that's on the Web2 side. But you have the freedom anytime to just take that social token out into your MetaMask address. And now you are like a Web3 native. And then you can plug into Web3 protocols like Uniswap, for example. So we are, we take like a hybrid approach because we think like going pure Web3 at this stage is a little bit hard, because a lot of your community is going to feel left out because they're not Web3 native.
I just can't stop thinking about what would happen if these Web2 platforms have this kind of feature, instead of liking someone's picture or, hurting someone's message or something, there's this interaction with social tokens. Because oftentimes right now, I feel like a lot of influencers, creators, artists feel this kind of disconnect from, first of all, their finances or the way they can make money as creators, and also the fans, like there's not really like a lot. I mean, there's Patreon and these type of things, but it's really like I've seen a lot of people withdraw from social media because of that, or taking a step back. And that's really cool to imagine that you are building the infrastructure for these things to happen.
Yeah, it's also like philosophically different, right? So let's say, like this whole program that you guys are building, like NewForum, let's say that was like an independent community-run content network, right? And we have forums there. So that you can kind of like raise money in a few ways, right? You can take donations from people who really like your work, which I'm sure many will be happy to donate, like $5 or $10 a month. But the issue with that is like there's no upside to that. Like I'm not bought into your community. Like I'm just a supporter from the outside. It's like the Oculus issue where, people gave Oculus some money on the Kickstarter and then they sold out to Facebook for $2 billion and you have a lousy t-shirt that's let's put it Oculus and Kickstarter, that's all you have. Whereas like with social tokens, you can actually like own part of that whole network, right? This idea of like owning network is very new. So when I'm contributing to like you, then I have a very vested interest to help this forum succeed. So, maybe I'm a technologist, like maybe I can help you with, any kind of like products that you might be building or, some tech on the background. But I wouldn't do that if I were giving you like $5 on Patreon, because I just like your work. It's up to you to figure out how to make that work. So we have like seen these types of interactions happen like much stronger with the, when you have that ownership model, as opposed to like that transactional model where like, hey, if you put like one video out, I'll tip you like $1 or $5, whatever.
Oh, that's really interesting. Social tokens, definitely gives this like the possibility and this flexibility for also creators to kind of move around. You're not like stuck in one place in a sense, and also have this ability to interact with your fans. Like the current social platforms is so one directional, right? And you barely know who's following you sometimes, but I feel like this allows this more of like it kind of, more like a personable kind of experience. And I think that's really great. I'm also like wondering like which areas, because whenever I think of social tokens, I think about like musicians and, artists and stuff like that, but maybe there's like other use cases.
Yeah, I'll touch upon your first point, which I think is very insightful and something that we have seen as well. So if you are, let's say you're an Instagram a creator and you have like 100,000 people like following you, how do you know who your biggest fans are? You kind of don't, right? Everyone's the same pretty much. Like they just like follow you. Maybe one person like comments on like a lot of your posts, and maybe you like recognize 2 or 3 of them, but that's, it doesn't like mean anything beyond that. But the issue is like when we have worked with creators like that. In fact, one of our the first creator on Roll was a female creator called Laurel. And she was like very afraid of like trying to like open up her DMs, because I'm sure like you kind of like understand, like it just like opens up this floodgates towards like unwanted attention and all that. But she would like love to like get in touch with her biggest fans, right? Like you just don't want to keep that like too open. So the things you can do with things like social tokens, like you really like curate like who has earned the most social tokens, right? And then like one model we have seen work really well is around access. So what you can then do is you can say like, hey, there's a public Discord that, or any platform you're using, right? But let's say Discord for our example, because it's just used often in crypto. So let's say you have a public Discord where, again, like coming back to our forum example, like where everyone's here to talk about like the future of the social web, right? And people can just put out their ideas and just share stuff. But then there's like a separate area where you need to hold at least 500 forum tokens to participate. That's where the magic happens. Like that's where there's going to be the most curated set of people that like you guys are bringing on, right? That's like your higher quality content. That's where 2 people are going to meet up and say, hey, you know what? Like let's start a new company. Like I totally have this idea and I'm looking for, I don't know, like a technical co-founder, and someone's probably going to be a technical co-founder in there and say like, hey, I really like this too. So just like a lot of that magic really happens in smaller groups of people who are kind of like driven in the same direction of, hey, I see the future. This is where I want to be. So I think like, yeah, that one is like that interaction. They can really do it in a curated way. And 2, once you really integrate social tokens, all of your million fans are not the same. They're not like just another username on like a dashboard somewhere. These are like real people. These are like people who will help you succeed. Like these are going to be people invested in your success. And I think like that's a very powerful, newer way to think about like Web3 as well.
Yeah, and I think that the other part of the question was about the use cases when it comes to social tokens. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so like I think you mentioned like music, and yes, we have like a very like a somewhat more upcoming like a whole music ecosystem. In fact, we recently hired one of our musician creators kind of like to help us onboard like with creators on Roll. So yes, like, but generally speaking, like from a tech perspective, it's a bit neutral, right? So we have actually, so we're having conversations with some very well-known brands, some very well-known events, athletes, kind of like sports groups and all of that too. And like nothing in the tech is stopping all of them from like using social tokens tomorrow, right? We just need to find like the right model that fits them in their business and like what they're building and how that integrates with everything else that you're kind of doing around that. But yeah, so like early adopters for us were like crypto artists, and we're like art collectors. That was like a whole genre we had. We had a bunch of streamers early on. They kind of have a good understanding of digital currency and what that means. Yeah, and like music is like a whole phase. So we're actually trying to curate like the whole, like musicians on roll, a type of a community on how you can use social tokens. And as I'm sure you know, like things like Spotify, while they're great, like the monetization side is like really low compared to how well you can do. And then, how do social tokens integrate with your music NFTs and things that are up and upcoming? So yes, I think in terms of like the tools wise, you can think of the initial step as being, how do I distribute my social tokens to my existing community? And if you do that like well, then that can be like a very powerful starting point for you. And then beyond that, it's about like, hey, how do I find the people who are adding the most value? And then reward them accordingly, right? Like, so if you have like these few people who have like help you get on a new platform, perhaps, or like can moderate your Discord, or they can kind of do some other like community stuff, and then you can kind of like pay them in your social tokens in some ways, and they're very happy to do that because they believe in you. That's why they're doing this in the first place. So yeah, there's like a bunch of things we have done. Like a fun one we had seen kind of like early on with one of the crypto artists was they started a YouTube channel. So this was Skinny. He's a tattoo artist from Spain, Madrid, and just to like get more people viewing the YouTube video, he took what we call like earn codes on roll. So this is like a unique code that if you enter and sign up to roll, then you can just get the social tokens in your wallet. He converted that to a QR code and hid that in the video. So if you watch the whole video, you'd see this QR code, but you will miss it if you are just like scrolling through or kind of not paying attention. And yeah, actually that's the code, and you get some like, fun skulls. So we've seen like a lot of interesting applications as well.
That's really creative, like that really is like entrepreneurial spirit. Like even if I think about me launching social token, I wouldn't even know where to start. So I think it's good to have a community of experts who know how to launch a token, and you at Roll obviously do that, because I would be confused how the tokenomics even like work. I mean, I know it now from our protocol, but even if you're like, I would think, okay, what if the token goes too high, or what if nobody is getting the token, or things like that, like I think it's if we lay the infrastructure and make it easier and more accessible, I think many more people are going to use these tools.
Yeah, that's like a big like almost like a part education, part product thing for us, because it's not some communities by their very nature are more distributed. So for them, you want to give like most of the tokens away to them, and then we come up with like a model for them on like how you can distribute that. But some of them, especially some which are very creator centric, you don't want to do that because you want to hold on to most of the tokens, because you have all these plans of like, hey, I want to do this next month, and the next quarter I have these plans and all that. It's almost like a budget that you're creating for yourself. Like, hey, for this month I'm allocating these many social tokens and this much. So it really depends on the community. So what we are really trying to do is kind of like make that as transparent as possible. So like you were saying, if you were to issue your social token, you can see maybe like 4 or 5 different models and say, hey, actually like this one fits me better. This is not the right thing for me. It worked for them, but that's just like not for me. And just like showcase those success stories really.
So I wanted to say, like, we don't always have social token experts on NewForum, and we have you here. So I'm going to ask this question. So social tokens tends to have like, I guess, various names. There's like creator coin, personal token, and like, what's the difference? And then also NFTs are supposed to be somewhat of social tokens. They're not really social tokens, they're kind of social tokens. So what does like all this mean if somebody's new to the space and they kind of like get into these like terms, like how?
It's like good question. It's a bit hard to answer just because like everyone's doing it in their own way. So for example, some things, I'll say like things that we don't do. So for example, like we don't want to build our own blockchain to issue our tokens. And the big reason for that is exactly what we touched upon earlier in this conversation, which was interoperability. If we are to build our own blockchain, then we have to build our own exchange. Then we have to build our own NFT marketplace, and we'll build our own lending protocol, and we'll build our own options protocol. And it's like you have to build the whole stack, right? And I think, I'm sure like a few people will succeed and, like really would like, really rooting for them to do that. But that's a much harder, it's a different problem. It's a very, we want to build this whole blockchain from the ground up. Whereas like our focus is like, we're more narrowly focused. So we want to do the best social token infrastructure we can, and then like plug into the best exchange we can, plug into the best NFT marketplace, best lending protocol, best another like staking protocol that comes, as or down the road. So that's the approach we have taken. What that really also like does is that important problem that we touched upon again like earlier in the conversation about the economy needs to survive and thrive even without role. So it's not centralized. So we do want to like make sure that does not happen, right? That's when you get the full benefits of the blockchain in the first place. So I would say like that's one thing to like think about. The other thing is some of the economic models, again, like in our biased opinion, obviously, are broken. So it becomes almost like a loyalty point model where the creator can say, hey, I can, everyone who likes this tweet gets 1 token or something like that. That really like destroys that whole ownership concept because you don't know how many tokens can exist. So, maybe today you have 100 tokens and that means you have 1% of the supply, but a year from now, that's like 0.01% or something. So it's not like investing for the long term. It almost becomes like a loyalty point thing. So you can, no one's collecting American airline miles to like feel ownership over like the club they're building. It's just, use it and throw it, right? So I'd say like the economics is another thing like just to be careful about, like when you're thinking about your ecosystem. The third thing actually, which these were some early attempts, we're still seeing some of these like once in a while, is people trying to back each community social token with their own native token. So what they will do something is like, hey, because we want to have like a price or like a set value, you will say like, hey, you have issued so like forums, right? Like on Roll, and forums is going to be backed by like 10,000 Roll tokens, which Roll token does not exist, by the way, so don't fall for scams or anything. But if that was the model, then the issue is then for the growth of the forum token is kind of constrained by the growth of Roll. And we don't want that. Like we want our communities to be like as successful as possible. So it's almost like you're trying to cap their upside by like how much you can build that infrastructure. So we want like most of the economic value to be accruing to the creators and their communities. Like we're very happy if someone becomes even more successful than Roll, and it's like more power to them. So I would say like there are lots of smaller decisions that go into like how you are designing this whole ecosystem and around that, which I think like matters. And we're just trying to do the best for our creators and their communities as opposed to like for us trying to like gain most value or something like that.
That's really great. It's really great that you're like so creator centric, and I feel like your intention is like in the right place, and I really appreciate that about the work you're doing in this space. And so speaking about creators, what do you think of creative funds and creative pools, perhaps in terms of like stacking options for creative projects? And this would be my last question because I know we've kept you here for a while.
Oh no, that's that's another like a really good question. We are just seeing that transition happen. Where creators, so the thing with, I'll give you maybe like a model of like how this goes, right? Like, so we have a creator who issues their social token on Roll. They do an initial distribution. They form this like strong social token community around like what they're doing. So maybe like 50, 60, 100 people. And then they start listing it on an exchange like Uniswap, where we can provide some liquidity as well. So essentially just gives a dollar value without going into the technical details. And so once you have a dollar value, what it really does is it makes it easier for people to enter that community or exit that community. So if you believe that, hey, these people are doing really good work and I want to like buy in to what they're doing, you can like buy them directly on an exchange. And if for some reason, like you think, hey, they were great early on, but now they're kind of moving in the wrong direction and I can't get them to change it, and I just don't want to be a part of this anymore, you can just like sell your tokens and move on, right? Like no hard feelings. So like once you're able to get things like exchange, what will really kind of become is like, how do you make decisions on this whole, like what is the community independent of the creator themselves? And that's kind of this DAO model that is also like really coming up, which is like you can collectively decide. So instead of like the creator saying like, let's do this, like you can kind of like pool these funds and then say like, oh, let's together do this. So like some small things we have seen is, so for example, you are a music creator who is fairly successful. So you have kind of like grown to like some level. But there's like lots of like music creators who are like not as successful as you, but who are just talented, right? Like who just want that help to go to the next step. And we have had like, hey, creator funds, like, hey, which of these 5 musicians do we fund with our like limited funds that we have? And the community can vote like whose work do they like the most, like who do they see are the most sincere, and then you can like help them. Which of these contests should we run? Small stuff like that. Like we've even seen things like, hey, the community has designed like these 5 logos. Like, what should our logo be? And like people can vote on that with their like token weighted voting, and then they are the winners, right? So even like small things like that, like all the way to big decisions, which is like how should we employ the money? So if you're a crypto artist, you have sold some crypto art, you have some ETH now, you put that in the community fund and stuff in your personal wallet, and then the community together can decide, hey, how should we spend this? Like maybe you just want to buy another artist's work or just something else, or you just want to help an emerging artist or something. So I would say like this is still a little bit emerging, but it's a very, very interesting area where, and we've like talked to some of these people who are kind of like doing this, and it's just like unfathomable to them that you can do this with crypto, right? Like these are not the people, these are not like first world, like American, like rich Silicon Valley kids, like who get to invest in things. Like these are, it's like people all over the world. They're just, kind of like very normal, regular people who are just like never done anything like this. And I think it's very empowering to them to be able to participate in this way.
You set the perfect tone, Sid, for wrapping it up today. I think, that's what fascinates me the most about Web3, like these tools that can help creators like you, me, like all over the world, like really make a difference for their lives and what they want to achieve in this world. And thank you so much for being part of today's forum. And I'm also curious to know, where can we find you on social media? Where can we find Roll on social media so we can follow the project?
Yeah, so we're mostly active on Twitter, so it's TryRoll HQ for Twitter account, and I'm Sid Kal, SIDKAL on Twitter as well. My DMs are open. Always happy to hear from your listeners, like what they think about what we're building as well. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sid. I mean, this was really amazing because, like I said before, we don't always have social token experts on NewForum, and it's such a fun, but also can be a little bit intimidating to like process everything. And I think you did a great job explaining to us. And I think our community members who are newer to the space will really appreciate this. Thank you. And thank you all for being a part of NewForum. If you want to get more involved in our community, make sure to follow us on our social platforms. IG is newcoin.nco, and our website is newcoin.org. We will have all the links in our description, including Sid's links as well. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And if you have any questions, do put them in the comments below. See you in the next episode.